Welcome back. And so the year is ending on a note of optimism, particularly with the recommencement of operation of the 125,000 barrel per day capacity Warri Refinery yesterday. And that's the first leg, the heart of the first leg of our conversation on the program this morning, as it comes with a lot of optimism about job creation, about injecting a lot of increase in the economy for the pump price of petrol. So what are the quick gains for the recommencement of operations of the Warri Refinery? Starting off this conversation this morning, we have Mr. Olabode Showumi, who is an energy analyst and CEO, Captree Limited, who joins us virtually. We also have Dr. Omonigo Otanocha. He's the Associate Professor of the Advanced Manufacturing Engineering Department of Mechanical and Colonel College of Engineering and Tech, Federal University of Petroleum Resources, Efuru, Delta State. We also have joining us economist Mr. Paul Alaje, who joins us via Zoom from Abuja. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the program. Of course, there are a lot of concerns about the news coming in from the NNPCL Limited about the recommencement of operations of the Warri Refinery. But let's start with the quick wins, particularly, projections about the reduction in the pump price of petrol, and of course, the optimism about the production of crude oil. Yes, that's what I was trying to remember earlier on, crude oil for the manufacturing sector and the production of kerosene. So what are your projections about the production of these, products, from crude oil for the economy, for the manufacturing sector, and for commerce in the country? Okay, I'm going to start with Mr. Paul Alaje.
Thank you so very much. A beautiful morning to you. It's good news that we saw that Warri Refinery started operation, about 60% capacity, according to the Managing Director at NPCL. And he has also mentioned that the two key products they are on now, one is diesel, about 1.9 million barrels a day, and the second one has to do with kerosene, about 4.9 million million liters, I beg your pardon. Diesel about 1.9 million liters, and kerosene about 4.9 million liters. That is what they are looking at. He also had promised that in the coming days, we might be seeing increase in production of PML. Recall that 60,000 capacity refinery, which is at Port Harcourt, was also mentioned to have come back to the stream early in December, even though we first heard that around November. In December, so barely a month in between, we're seeing the second government-owned refinery coming into the stream. And the argument has been that this refinery will come to reduce the gap that we have. The projection here is that this will have impact on products, it will have impact on cost of diesel, it will also have impact when PMS they started refining. By the time they start refining, it will have impact on cost of on cost of petrol, that is PMS, people put in their vehicles and use for other reasons. Now, the projection is that this price will be significant. For me, as an economist, it's a good one, so we must commend it, because when government is not doing well, we criticize some of those. So first of all, let me sing this in that this is really commendable. But this is what we look at. You see, production is about supply chain. What is the guarantee for crude? We understand that the Dangote refinery still imported crude for a 650,000 barrels refinery. Now, for the smaller refineries, this Warri Refinery, 125,000 barrels crude, and the 65,000 barrel crude, refineries that we have in Port Harcourt. What is the guarantee that we are going to have crude for this refinery in the light of the fact that we have forward pledged some of our crude to those who are giving us loans? So for me, if you are able to plan it from end to end, that's from the creek or from the exploration to making available in the filling station, then we can say that we can deal with the supply side challenge. So, but as of today, it is good that we have this. We know that for manufacturing, you need to work on this for quite some time, maybe weeks, maybe months, and see that you are steadily able to produce consistently. And because this refinery has been shut down for nearly a decade, then if you are able to do that, then you are sure that you can deal with the pricing issue. If we say that the price will come down significantly now because there is trust deficit when it comes to NNPCL among few other government agencies, it is good that we have this on board, but how is it translating to price of, to the price that we are getting the product at the filling station? It's a conversation many Nigerians seem to be interested in.
Mr. Shomi, I'm going to come to you for the same question, and I'm sure you have some, reactions to what Mr. Alaji has said, particularly with the projections about the reduction in price of the products that are immediately being produced on the manufacturing sector, which would be AGO and kerosene.
Okay, thank you. Once again, good morning to you, and compliments of the season. There's no magic to it. Just like Alaje, who's an economist, has mentioned, there are supply chain issues, there are economic considerations, and these considerations has to be made by the operators. I think, to my mind, one of the things that we need to look at is the limitation of Nigeria as an entity to supply the amount of crude oil that is expected. A couple of months ago, Nigeria was just producing about 1.4 million liters, 1.4 million barrels per day. Fortunately, that has increased, but not astronomically. I think we're still less than 2 million barrels per day. Now, in that amount of crude, less than 3/4 of that belongs to us. In fact, let's say 55% of that will come to us because of the agreements that are related to it, either as JV agreements or production sharing contract agreements. Now, out of that as well, previous government has already taken some loans on it, and so a significant part of that, even though has not been produced, is going to go into loan servicing. And then when we now get to the rest, we are now going to have some things that we are going to use for servicing of daily things. They're going to pay salaries and so we're not looking at a lot more than even 300,000 barrels that is available to Nigerians, and out of it shared across. So basically, Nigeria cannot meet the total demand that is being expected by those refineries, and that includes Dangote, it includes NNPCL themselves, and that's why it is a global business, really. So basically, there will still be the need for some importation until there is a greater capacity and more investment is made in the upstream side of the business, which has totally nothing to do with refining. So once that is done, the rest has to do with operational excellence, and then how they're able to better what they do. It should be understood that they cannot run at a loss, because nobody is supporting them. Subsidy is gone even for NNPC. So whatever they are going to do, what the competition will do really is to make the best possible price available to Nigerians. And because there's competition, they won't be able to have unfair profit on Nigerians. And it means that there's going to be innovation, better services. And one of the innovations I believe that we saw is the fact that for the very first time in a very long time, there isn't artificial scarcity in the Christmas period. More importantly, there are innovations to reduce prices, which first started commendably by the Dangote Refinery and was followed on by NNPC themselves. So those are the kind of things that Nigerians will expect. But in terms of the reduction of the price to 200 naira or 300 naira, based on the current price of crude oil, I am not an expert in economics, but I sincerely doubt that will be achieved. So that would be my comment on that.
All right, let's bring it to Dr. Otanucha. The two gentlemen have spoken to something quite critical. So on one hand, we're dealing with importation of finished product, which is PMS. And now the NNPC is saying, look, we're getting to a point of energy security and net exporter of petroleum products. But we have a challenge because we borrowed the way into our future with these crude-backed loans. What do you see playing out? Because this is an international commodity. Now we may have to be importing crude to be able to service all of these refineries because the ones we produce here are not just enough and there are not enough investment. As a matter of fact, we're producing crude, core crude is just about let's just call it 1.5 million barrels, just slightly less than that. When you add things like condensate, you can now get to 1.8. I want you to speak to that, Doctor.
I want to thank you for bringing me on. Good morning, Nigerians. First and foremost, it's good news that Area 1, which is Zone 1 in the WROPC, is on stream to produce the AGO, which is the fuel of the industry. But talking about PMS, that might not be too much. Maybe we'll have to wait in the next 4, 5, 6 months for PMS to be available, which is common for Nigerians. When you hear people say, I'm going to buy fuel, it's usually PMS. So that might not translate to good news to them for now because it's AGO. Then talking about the question you mentioned, the previous speakers have spoken very, very well. But I just want to mention, the last speaker mentioned about they will always make gain. No, on the contrary, refinery business is more of marginal gains. There's not much gain in it. So that's why most people want to invest in production of crude and sell in dollars and make their money. But when you want to refine in Naira, buy crude, refine in Naira and sell, it's not that economically lucrative for investors. So that's why they need to be incentives. That's why they need to look at petrochemicals. That's where Warri Refinery has an advantage. You have an FCCU, and they also have carbon black unit. These are petrochemicals that can add more value to the business. So the easiest way to go, when I say easiest way, that's there's a presidential committee. I mentioned this in one of your programs and channels. There was a presidential committee by the Tinubu administration under the chief of staff, Bajamiala, through the Minister of Petroleum Resources. A lot of recommendations were made to the federal government. And then also recently in Delta State, Asaba, there was the 8th meeting of the National Council on Hydrocarbons, where my university, FUPRI, proposed that we should go community-wise. There are a lot of capped marginal fields, and there are also new fields that are supposed to come on board. Now, if they are incentivized, leveraging on the PIA, communities-oriented entities can own assets and quickly ramp up production. I am of the view, as espoused yesterday by the economist, there was a professor of petroleum economics that was on board yesterday on channels, who mentioned that we should strive to hit 4 million barrels per day. Is it possible? Why, technically speaking, it's possible. All we need is leadership. Once there is leadership in the industry, some level of transparency, then communities can be involved. This will stop issues of oil theft, crude pipelines tampering, and then communities will be involved in the business and farm in investments. We all know the economists have spoken. I think they will also buttress the point that a lot of foreign direct investment is going to dwindle. So we need a resilient oil and gas industry in Nigeria. That means some of our materials that are used for refinery, especially the parts. For example, the columns, they use materials like Iconel 316 and other variants. We need to start producing them in Nigeria to support the local refinery. And the right way to go is produce crude community-based, let them go into assets, let them farm in their own equities, and then own some percentage of these assets. That means they will protect the business, and there will be more crude availability, crude oil theft to go down, and then there will be more availability to take care of the foreign loans that we have taken, and also make enough for local refineries to progress. One of the presenters, the first speaker mentioned whether there will be crude availability. That's a very big problem, because ask yourself, if you're in business and you're able to produce crude and just sell, then you now look at selling dollars, then you want to sell in naira within Nigeria. It doesn't look lucrative for businesses. So they need to be incentivized. For example, they can be given some priorities, tax waivers, and also be given waivers. There are some oil mining licenses that were just recently released, according to what I saw in the news. And those people need to be encouraged to start to go into production. And then universities, especially the Federal University of Petroleum Resources, even ABU Zaria, University of Port Harcourt, where most of these fields are, should be encouraged to be equity holders, to be part of the businesses in this area, where you can have what they call the triple helix coming together to manage these businesses. That's where we have a possibility of ensuring energy security in our country. Because from the university, you have R&D, research and development. Without research and development, you are going nowhere. So research and development will bring out innovative ideas to bring down cost of operations, cost of production, so that there'll be enough money for investors. These are the few ideas that I have, because this is what my university stands for. We made a memo to the 8th Council on the National Council on Hydrocarbons in Delta State recently, and they were clearly stated out there. It was well taken by the council, and we expect action. We can be called to put our boots on ground and get things working. Thank you.
Let's take it to Mr. Alaje. Mr. Alaje, said the doctor has said a lot of things. I would like you to react to some of the things he has said, whether you agree or not, especially that has to do with this is a bit of a dilemma that we may find ourselves given the level of supply we have. And these incentives that you're talking about, what do you see, broadly speaking? Because one of the biggest incentives for the communities that he's talked about, that I feel that the PIA provided for, but we don't know how well that has been in terms of the 3% that is supposed to go, the operating costs of these oil companies are supposed to go to the communities. I don't know how that has been effective. If that in itself, which is primary legislation backed by law, is not effective, what other incentive are we going to talk about that is believable to be able to aggregate all of the components of the industry to ramp up production, attract investors? I also like you to speak to the issue of whether this naira sales of crude oil in naira is really a game changer, or we still have a challenge with that.
Oh, thank you once again for having me. But like I mentioned earlier, the critical problem we have now that we have 2 functional refineries, even though they might not be producing a product that is ubiquitous among many consumers, which is PMS, but at least factories, which is very important, critical stakeholder of our nation, and to steer production, AGO is very, very, very critical. So, but supply is a problem. You know, in production, the origin, the most important thing in production is your source of raw material. The raw material to make sure these refineries are working remains the crude oil. How are we going to get it? Luckily, we are blessed with this, but unfortunately, due to some decisions that may not completely be right, then we are not. A lot of persons will say that when you look at the refineries, one is just 65,000 barrels a day. The other, 65. The other one is about 125. Even Dangote Refinery is only 650. Put all of those together. In 2024 budget, what we have there is over 1 million, nearly about 2 million barrels. In 2025 budget, we have about 2 million barrels. What people should know is that those millions that government write does not belong, everything does not belong to us. We have agreements with those who are actually exploring it, which is not the federation. So when those people exploit crude, a percentage that belongs to government and they are sold is what goes to government. The remaining goes to those who have invested in the sector, and we know them. These multinational, these international oil companies, they own them. That on one side. On the second side, there are a lot of fields that are not yet been maximized, that we have not started work on them. Even as close by as one within Lagos or axis, there are quite a number of fields that Nigeria need to work on. Whatever it will take to put investment on the supply side, because it's a matter of time. If we have major issue around any area of production, such that supply stops flowing, the truth is that the refineries will go down. So how do we guarantee supply to the refinery? This is what those in authority, NNPCL, regarding us upstream, this is what they should be thinking about. This is what they should guarantee, because if you build more factory, it will just be like rice. We build more factory, but we are not having paddy. What happens? Factories have started shutting down, price of rice has started going up. Meanwhile, government is still trying to give rice to the people at a very expensive rate. You and I know what the rate was last year. You know what the rate is, so that we don't drive these refineries to that narrative of the primary source of raw material. If you talk about community owning, I say nothing wrong. If we can work with what will be the ratio of community, that means they want to either buy a field, individuals have field, companies have field. So they want to buy a field and they want to expand, they have the technology to do it. Then it's fine. Again, those that have non-functional field, what is government doing about it? Because more than any other time, we need functional fields right now. And there are some fields that have been exhausted. There are other fields we need to look at. So these are things I think those in authority should consider, so that our output from the source, talking about crude oil, would improve, and we can take all of these into the refineries, improve on our output, such that our factories will become functional in terms of availability of product, and supply side will eventually drive down demand. This is what I see in the coming days. Yes, some of these refineries will come, and let's also put that there are other smaller refineries, by the way. I think about 6 or 7 of them that came to the base, about 6 of them. One has 1,000 capacity, 5,000 capacity, because the capacity is not that significant. So we are not talking about them. And many of them are privately owned.
All right.
You know, from...
Yeah, pardon me, that is the expectation, but there's another part of the conversation that is just as critical, and which we spoke to at the start of the program. This time around, the honesty of the NNPCL that the Warri Refinery is producing AGO and kerosene as against the Port Harcourt Refinery that was announced to be refining crude, but somewhere down the line, there were allegations that it is only blending naphtha and another component of petrol. But that brings cause for reflection on the amount that has been spent on the revamping of the refineries. Some are quoting $19 billion spent on the entire refinery. But when we see what other countries have spent on building a refinery, Angola, for instance, what is being quoted for the refinery is $1.5 billion Cabinda refinery. So the question is, has the money spent on these refineries, have they been justified? I'm bringing that question to you, Mr. Showmi.
Okay. I think sometimes when we do this analysis, we also don't help all of us with the very first question, which is the issue about trust. I think a couple of years ago, there was something in the news about, I think it was the Obasanjo government or so, that they have spent a few billions on power and electricity. But what they were actually talking about was the budget for power across about 10 years or something like that. So when we say that we have spent 15 billion or whatever amount that they're talking about the amount that has been spent on the refinery, I think, across almost 20 or 30 years. That cannot be an apple for apple comparison when you are comparing with that of Angola. That's the first thing. So if you were to make an analysis, you will be able to compare analysis either in terms of the investment across the same time, and then you will now be speaking to something of proper comparison. The second part, which is on the issue of believability and credibility, is that when information is passed, like issue about blending, some of it were based on some amount of ignorance, and some of it was also based on the fact that they were not completely.
All right, so many sides to this conversation, but we must thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time on the program. We've been talking with Mr. Olabode Shomi, energy analyst and CEO Captree Limited, who joined us via Zoom. Dr. Monigo Otanucha, who is also an associate professor of advanced manufacturing engineering, joined us from Delta State, while Mr. Paul Alaje, economist, joined us from Abuja. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time, and we hope that those positive projections about the recommencement of operations of the Warri Refinery will materialize in the coming days. When we return, we'll bring you more on the program. Stay with us. We'll be right back.